Hello everyone, welcome back to UiPath tutorials. So in the last video, I have shown you some of the questions on filter activity, and in this video, I am going to show you some of the questions on invoke method and the invoke code. Now let's start with the question 3, where below is the sequence where developer is adding Rahul to list with the help of invoke method as shown in figure 2. Now the developer is adding a Rahul which is of a string type, which is basically a string, into the list with the help of invoke method. Now this is figure 2 if you see here, and invoke method is a sequence here inside which invoke method activity is used. If you see here in the target object, the list lst name is passed, and the lst name is basically a list of string here which is defined in the variable panel. Now if you see the method name the developer is used here is add, and the parameter in the property, if you see here the parameter section, now the parameter is added as a Rahul. Now in the parameter the value is added as a Rahul. Now in the right line it is written as string dot join, in the bracket inside the double quotes it's comma, then again it's a comma for the separation, lst name. Now what will be the output of this basically? Now if you see here, this is a figure 1 where the lst name variable type is list of string, and the figure 2 it is adding a Rahul value to the list. Now let's see here what is the question here, what is the output of right line. Now if you see there are 4 options. One is it Rahul, comma Rahul. C is error, object reference not set to instance of object, or D is value cannot be null. I hope you have already guessed the answer. Let's check what is the actual answer of this question. So the actual answer of this question 3 is answer D. Answer D is where error value cannot be null. Now why this is the answer? For this, let me open the studio first to explain the whole concept, how the developer has designed it. Now if you see, this is the sequence here, this is our invoke method. Similar way in the variable panel I have defined the lst name variable which is of list of a string, which is whose type is list of string. And now if you see in the target object I have passed the list name, method name is add, and in the properties click on the parameters and I'm passing here the Rahul. In the right line I have used the same thing that is used in the question, that is string dot join, and bracket starts, then it's a comma here used for the separation, then another comma, then the lst name. Now if I am going to run this, so the runtime execution error is occurred which says value cannot be null, and the parameter name is target object, exception type is argument null exceptions. So sometimes in the question they also ask what type of exception occurred. So the type is system dot argument null exception, and the message is value cannot be null. So that's why we have checked option D, which is value cannot be null. Now why this error is occurred? This error is occurred because we have not initialized the list. Now to initialize this list, I'm just writing list of string. Now if I'm going to run now, you will see the output. The output is display that Rahul, because we are adding a Rahul to it now, and we are also initializing the list here. The initialization can be done from here also, or if you don't want to do it from here, you can use the assign activity. Just write down the variable name of the list, and you have to write down as a new list of string. Now if you're going to run this, sorry, I have to use this run file. Now if you see the output, it's Rahul. So I hope this question is clear to you, and now let's move to the next question. So the question 4 is, below the sequence where developer is adding Sudhanshu and Rahul to list with the help of add to collection activity, and at last sorting the list with the help of invoke method activities. So in the above question, the method that we are using is add, and here we will going to use the sort. In the figure when you see the lst name list string, it is defined, basically this variable is a list of string type, and we have already also initialized here as a new list of string. In the figure 2, the developer is using add to collection at the two places to adding the Sudhanshu and Rahul, and also using the invoke method, wherein the method name it is used as short, and in the right line it is just printing the list value. So what is the output of this right line? Basically, when I'm adding the two names Sudhanshu and Rahul to the list, and then I'm sorting the data of the list, and what will be the output of the right line? So you can see the four options here. One is Rahul comma Sudhanshu. So first we are adding Sudhanshu and then Rahul, just remember it, and then we do the sort. Now please choose the correct option. A is Rahul comma Sudhanshu, B is comma Rahul comma Sudhanshu, C is Sudhanshu comma Rahul. Now D is no result appear. Answer is A. Why? Let me go to the studio. Let me open the question number 4 here. So this is a sequence here. So you see the variable is defined as lst name, where it is also initialized. Add to collection activity is used here, and we are adding the Sudhanshu to this list. The type argument is string. Similar way, I am adding one more value, that is Rahul. The type of argument is string here. Invoke method is used here, where I am passing lst name and the method name short. In the parameter we don't have to pass anything, because anyways we are sorting the data which has been added earlier by the add to collections activity to the list. Now what will be the output of this right line? When it is written as a string dot join, then bracket start, then comma separation, then another comma to separate the both the parameters, that is lst name. Now if I'm going to run this sequence, the output will be the Rahul and Sudhanshu. So I have added the Sudhanshu first and then Rahul first. But if you see the Rahul and Sudhanshu, Rahul is coming first and Sudhanshu is coming just after it. So it has been sorted now. Alphabetically it is sorted. So this will be the output way of the question. So these type of questions you will see in the UiARD exam on the invoke methods. Now I have one more question for invoke code. The question is, what is the output of write line of below sequence with the input variable of string type, where input variable is of string type. Now if you see the sequence here, where in the assign activity input is basically a string type which is already declared in the variable panel. Now in the input, UiPath tutorials is assigned initially. Then in the invoke code, we are just passing the input, this input here in the invoke code, and in the write line I will going to print the input. Now what will be the output of this write line basically? So there are the few options you will see below. One is UiPath space tutorials, then UiPath. Yeah, before just showing these options, one more thing. So here I'm adding UiPath tutorials to the input, and here I am appending this UiPath to the input. So on the basis of this sequence, you have to check mark these you have to select the proper options which are shown below. Now if you see here, the option A is UiPath space tutorials, then UiPath, then UiPath space tutorials, then space UiPath. C is UiPath tutorials, and D is only UiPath. What will the answer for this? So the answer is D basically, that is only UiPath. Now why it is shown, let me show you in the studio this. Let me go to the question number 5. Inside the variable, I have already declared this input which is of string type. I have passed the UiPath space tutorials here. Then in the invoke code, I'm using this expression as input equals to input plus UiPath. Similar way, I am also passing the input inside this input variable. The direction is out and the type is string. Now let me run this sequence. So if you see here, the UiPath is printed, and that is what the answer is for these options. Now why that is happened, when I have passed the UI tutorials to this variable, now it is holding this value, okay, and when I'm passing this variable to the invoke code, inside the invoke code, but instead of that I am using the out direction. That means the value that input variable is holding, it will not going to take this value inside the invoke code. Now when I'm using this expression, input variable is not holding any value right now at the runtime, then it will going to put only the UiPath into this input variable, and so how the output is printed as UiPath. Now this question can be asked as a many way basically. It can be asked as, if the direction is in, then what will be the output. So you have to go through the different scenarios of this invoke code, and definitely you will going to see one question on the invoke code also in UiARD exam. Now this is all about these two activities. I am going to focus on some of the more questions in our next video. Thanks everyone for watching it. Have a great day.